This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
Welcome back to Black and Privileged in America podcast, Power, Love, and Money Conversations for Black Thriving, supported by Infinite Resources. I'm your host, Abena Sankofa. Today, I have a very special guest, a financial expert who is a trailblazer in the world of personal and corporate finance and a passionate advocate for economic empowerment. But first, catch Black and Privileged in America podcast on the Amplified DSM network and YouTube channel, all social media platforms, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Efrem Jackson is the founder and owner of Free to Serve Financial Ministries, an organization with a mission to help individuals free themselves from debt, unnecessary consumerism, and adverse financial decisions that can stop you from pursuing your dreams. We're going to focus on the essentials of financial literacy and money habits and the unique challenges and opportunities within the Black community. Financial freedom for all. What a good idea. Efrem, welcome to the show.
Hey, awesome. Thank you so much. This is awesome. Thank you for bringing me on. This is great. You're talking about a topic that's just right up my alley.
I know. And when I think about money and money matters and, Black people, the disparities, the wealth gap, I think about you and your story. So can you start by kind of sharing and telling a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become this finance mogul that you are today?
Yeah, no worries. I'm originally from Chicago, born and raised. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, Wild Hunters, for anybody know what that means. So,
you a Chicago kid?
Yeah, I'm a Chicago kid at heart. And, growing up, we didn't talk about money. Money was always seen as a negative. It was always, we didn't have enough, or your parents fighting about money. It was just something that was never spoken of or seen in a positive light at all, right? And then, you go away from home, you go to college, you go all these places, and then you get cornered in debt and all these different things, and you try to live what you think is the American dream. You try to move up that ladder and do all these things, and you find yourself kind of wanting. You find yourself, well, wait a minute, this isn't. I bought a bad book of goods here. Something's not going exactly right. So came here to Iowa to go to Iowa State. And what got me into finances, if I'm being quite honest, I came into a sum of money in my 20s.
Ooh, you sued somebody and you got a check. Is that what happened?
I got a check. I can't go into how I got the check.
Okay, cool. I understand those disclosures, non-disclosures.
But I got a check, a nice 6-figure check, and blew through that check. Making it rain.
Oh my gosh!
Blew through that check very quickly.
I think that's a story that a lot of people can relate to.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look back over my life and I look about what that funds could have done for me if I would have had the knowledge and the information of what to do with it and what that could have done for my family, that's what spurred me to go into finance. I was like, look, I cannot have something come up in my life and I don't know how to deal with it. And that was just the start. And that's what kind of led me into finances and what eventually led me into Free to Serve. And doing the ministry and the work that I do there is I just saw there was a big gap and a disconnect within African-American communities, particularly around our church communities, where we just aren't teaching people about finances. We're not teaching them how to live life, how to tackle some of these tough issues. So I was like, okay, I got to step in and try to see what we can do in that area.
So you mentioned church, and I think, if you pay your 10% in tithes, then God will bless you, Efrem. Are you saying that there's a little more to it?
There's a little bit more to that.
Okay.
So this is where the church, particularly the Black church, and the church in general really, but has dropped the ball. So we've approached finances in a way that stewardship and finances is all just about giving, and that's it.
Give till it hurts, right?
Give till it hurts,
mm-hmm.
And you've seen those old kind of jokes about the pastor. We just buying pastor a new car,
Yeah. I'm tired of seeing the preachers wearing the suit jackets that go to their knees, and then they're driving a Cadillac, and everybody else in their churches are riding the bus or the church van. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
And because we got it wrong.
Yeah,
we got it so wrong, and what we really should be teaching is the whole counsel of what does stewardship actually mean. And stewardship is about not just giving; it's about how you earn, how you save, how you invest. It's about how you live your life, and we're not doing a good job of incorporating these principles into the community, into one of the staples of our community that's been a staple for years, that has helped bring about a lot of social change through the church and through these different organizations. And that's just a ball that we've been dropping for a long time.
Interesting. Very interesting. The term stewardship, I remember the first time, I remember the first time that I heard that phrase outside of church. I'm a church kid, grew up a church kid. I ain't a church kid no more, but I grew up pretty much in the church my entire young life. And stewardship was a concept that was used often within those four walls. But beyond those four walls, I hadn't heard that phrase much. So can you describe to people or define stewardship?
Yeah, that's a really good, because you're right. It's most of the time people they think about giving, or it's not really used properly. When I think of stewardship, it's how am I utilizing all of the resources that I have been given to their fullest ability, right? The wealth that I'm being brought into that surround me, my jobs, my resources, my time, my talent, my networks. How am I stewarding my body, everything, in order to get out of me whatever I need to get out to make my world better, my community better, my relationships better? That's what stewardship is. It's not just, I'm just giving here. No, how am I managing all the resources that come into my life? Now, particularly, I kind of focus primarily on just the financial side of those resources, but that's what it really is. How am I managing all these different things that are coming into my life?
Okay, so this is like a holistic conversation. I didn't expect that.
Oh yeah, it's a holistic conversation, and that's where people are missing. Because if you think about finances has a very spiritual component, a very mental component to it, behavioral, psychological component, and a lot of decisions that people make about money, they make them and they don't even know why they make them. Mm-hmm. They might be some from their past. They might be, maybe they grew up a little poor, and so now they have more of a hoarding kind of mentality where they don't want to spend anything, or maybe the opposite, where they grew up where they didn't have a lot, and they're like, well, I got it now, I'm going to flex.
Yeah, right? Flex, do everything.
They want to do everything.
Yeah.
And so these issues come together to all play a role in who we are and what is our money identity, is a kind of a way of kind of thinking about it. And if we don't understand these different things, then we might be making decisions about our money and about wealth that has nothing to do with helping us lead our best life.
What are some common financial challenges that you see specifically impacting the Black community, and even more granular here in Central Iowa? Because there are some challenges that people face regionally, and maybe we could talk about those too. But what are some common ones that you see in your practice? You know,
the biggest thing I see, which you kind of talked about a little bit, was with the wealth gap that we see here. And if you look at the data, we look at the numbers, African Americans in general tend to continue lagging behind, right? If I was just looking at the latest data, I think it was from 2024 or 2023, the census data. We're about 13%, 13.6%, something like that, of the population, but we'll have about 4.7% of the wealth.
And isn't that supposed to go to zero by 2050 or something?
Yeah, it's crazy. I was looking at stats that talk about by 2053 or so from like Prosperity Now and some different groups that projected being zero. But here's the opposite of that. That's real funny. If you look at data that shows,
I'm trying to figure out what's funny. Like,
no, it's weird. It's weird.
It is weird.
But here's the thing. So if you look at that data that talks about potentially going negative by 2053, there's other data out there that talks about what our projected wealth as a community is supposed to be by 2050. And that estimates go as about $103 trillion, like some crazy amount of trillions of dollars is what the wealth is supposed to be in terms of what's our spending power and buying power and all that.
Oh.
So that lets me know that there's wealth there. It's just not being properly stewarded to get us where it needs to go.
Okay, now this gives me some optimism.
Yeah.
I've been kind of ruminating on that data that said zero by 2053 or whatnot. And I'm like, gosh, I know we got some Black billionaires, some Black millionaires. Is it or is it not their responsibility to help people? And what can we do within our families to kind of mitigate this stuff? But now you're saying, our collective wealth will be what it is or whatever that data is, but our spending power will still be there.
Correct.
Yeah?
The spending power is there. It's just the stewardship of that spending power is not there. And so you can have trillions and trillions of dollars in spending power, but if you're not directing it to the right areas, then if you're not directing it into activities that produce dynastic wealth, then you're not gonna impact that net worth number. And that's what we have to work on, is how do we take the spending power that we have and redirect it into activities and things that can produce this type of dynastic wealth, this kind of lasting wealth that's even better, even more so than generational wealth. It's this concept of creating dynastic, long-lasting wealth.
Interesting. Okay. You're piquing my interest. I got homework to do. We all do. Hopefully people will tune into this episode and begin here. So you spoke about our spending power and stewardship. So how do our cultural attitudes toward money within the Black community influence our financial habits?
Yeah, no, that's really good. So it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before about kind of psychological and behavioral patterns.
Yeah.
And you can have kind of learned, passed down traumas and how we experience things. We don't even know why we do what we do. The biggest one that for me growing up was we didn't talk about money.
Mm-hmm.
It was like
it's taboo.
It's
it's
taboo.
kind of like, we don't talk about mental health.
Yeah.
We don't talk about money. There's a ton of things that we could list that we don't talk about.
And what happened if you ask Big Mama about the bills? You're gonna get popped in the mouth, probably.
Popped in the mouth.
So
That's grown folk business.
Exactly. That's grown folks' business. Stay out of grown folks' business.
Yeah.
Go on outside and play. So we've developed the culture where you don't talk about it, and then we've also have developed some cultural identities around fake it till you make it, and kind of this kind of fake flexing, where it really doesn't benefit anybody. Because now if we are all trying to act like we have something or look like we have something without actually having something, then how are we passing the knowledge and actually sharing the information with the people that do have something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but those are learned behavior. Those are things that kind of get passed down from generation to the next. And so we got to start there with how do we start just having conversations at our tables, in our communities about finances.
Last episode, I had two guests on. They are with an organization here in town called the One Economy Financial Development Corps. Executive Director Vince Lentz and the Community Engagement Manager Wesleyan Caldwell were here, and they were outlining some of the programs that they have for families and individuals to tap into to free up some of this money that's floating around. Here in Iowa, we're in the capital city, Des Moines, which is a very wealthy town. This is a wealthy place. I mean, we're talking about the insurance capital of the Midwest, if not the country. We're talking about the agricultural center of our country, located right in the center of the United States. Yep. So there is wealth here. And so this organization has programs that Black folks can tap into that would, kind of release some of this money to them, whether it's for a small business or for them as an individual. It actually, as they were describing it, and we got into the conversation last time about whether or not the requirements to access these funds really just mirrors what majority culture already has in place. Are y'all just vouching for people, along? So with that in mind, like, what are some key steps that someone could take to start improving their financial literacy? How do you know if a program or an initiative is one that's good for you to tap into? How do you know where to begin educating yourself about financial health? Yeah,
that's a good question. It's funny because when I look back, because I've probably taught like thousands of people over the last few years and one-on-one and workshops and groups and things like that. And if I had to sum the one thing that I really want people to focus on first, it is being intentional about what is it that you actually want and what you're doing. Because there's so much information out here that you can get lost in the process of searching. But if you're more intentional and more focused and say, I'm getting ready to start this business, this restaurant or whatever it is, I'm trying to be very intentional. And now I can start focusing on resources that are specific to that. I see a lot of people, they come in, they really not quite sure what their focus is and what they're trying to do. So being intentional about just your life and what you're focusing, because to me, focus brings you direction. And that's helped me a lot in weeding out stuff that I didn't want to do. Because as I started maneuvering in corporate America and started maneuvering and networking with people, a lot of people sometimes will come to you with programs and things that maybe aren't in your best interest, or maybe will take you further away from where you want to go. So being able to understand and say, that's great, but if I do this, this is great for you in your books and what looks good for you, but this may not be what I need to do right now. So I think that's the first step. Is how do you get very intentional about your focus and what you're trying to do is the first start. And then from there, spend a lot of time. I'm a big fan of networking. I think your network is very correlated to the people you spend time with.
Is that what you're saying? Is your network is your net worth?
Oh yeah, 1,000%, 1,000%. I think Jim Rohn used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
The books you read and the people you hang out with, and that's 1,000% true. And so expanding our networks with individuals to get connected to these different programs, to get connected to different individuals, I think is another way to start that process. But narrowing the focus is got to be key.
Tell me a little bit about Free to Serve. Yeah. What do you do? Who do you help? What does that look like? And I know you're Christian-centered. So tell us about free to serve.
Yeah. Free to serve. The name kind of says it all. Is the concept.
But you don't work for free though,
no,
right?
No.
Okay.
It
does not imply
that's
that.
a misconception that every nonprofits need to make money too.
Right.
But no, the name is in it, right? The concept is to help people get financially free so they can serve their families, serve their communities, and so they can serve God. So what we focus on is creating programs, workshops, educational content for two different groups. So first is individuals, so helping individuals connect their faith to their finances. We have 8-week, 9-week courses and workshops that walk through things like budgeting, debt planning, income generation, you name it. All around how do you start a foundation? Because that's where people, like you mentioned before, there's so much information, all these things out there. So how do you get started? Where do you even go to kind of start piecing these things together? So that's where we kind of focus on is, hey, here's the foundation. Here's the things that you want to work on. And then after you get this, okay, here's the next level. So kind of making things very stair steps for people. The other group that we work with are church leaders, because I realized that the more I worked in the ministry, the more I work with people that, no offense to any of the church leaders listening right here, but a lot of y'all don't know what y'all doing as far as the business side goes, right? So
I remember growing up, Efrem, check this out. I remember growing up here in Des Moines, and there was a popular store on the east side of town called Kmart.
Oh, yeah.
And what churches would do to fundraise was have a bake sale at Kmart. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I was a kid and I liked sweets. So I'd take my quarters and go get my Rice Krispie treats, no problem. But then as I got older, I realized there's got to be a better way to fundraise, right? Yeah. And many churches have never learned a better way.
Correct. And so you have the blind leading the blind. And it's so off-putting and upsetting because a lot of individuals go to get assistance, to get help, to learn how to be disciples and to learn how to lead better lives, and then the people can't really help in that area because they don't know themselves, right? So the other half of what I focus on is how to train up leaders through certification programs and things like that walk through church governance, organization, fundraising, as well as budgeting, all those different aspects, and how to create financial ministries in their own churches, so that they can use some of the tools and things I've put together and form their own stewardship ministry out of their own church that focuses on teaching their congregation and teaching their communities about financial literacy. So it's kind of that start with the top, let's get them, and then move that out to the individuals in the congregation and then to the community.
I love that. The idea of a church or whatever religious organization being able to empower their congregations really, and then being certified through your organization to do it. So that's powerful. Can you share some of those practical tips for budgeting and saving that are particularly effective for Black families?
Yeah.
Considering the fact that we're usually underbanked or unbanked and things like that.
Yeah. So I'll go in the same kind of order that I would teach a class in. So when I'm teaching a class, when I'm talking about this, the first thing I always talk about is going back to what I mentioned before. One, being intentional and focused, right? Because once again, that's just paramount of what you're trying to prescribe for. Because I see so many people, they'll take a job, they'll do something, and I'm doing it because of this money, or I'm doing it because of this, and it doesn't really line up with what they really want to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm all about, how do you take your finances, create a plan for your life, and then now live out and align your finances to go after whatever that thing is that you said you want to go do, right? So if we go to budgeting, that's the second tip, right? The second kind of layer. Once I know my focus and I know this is where I'm trying to align and where I want to go to, how do I arrange my budget to help do that? The best thing I tell people to do is simple, and I'm surprised more people don't do this.
I'm like eagerly hanging on your every word.
This is the simplest thing.
Yeah.
I teach my class to do something I call the octopus method with your finances. Super simple. So you create separate checking accounts and savings accounts, and you label one, this is for my bills, this is for my emergency money and savings, this is for my investments, et cetera, right? And you live out of just one account that's for spending. You separate your assets. I see so many people that they try to do everything through just one or two accounts.
Oh, yeah.
And it confuses them. They never live out what they say they're going to do. So it starts with, what is my plan? What is my intention? How I want to live? I create my budget. And now I put a system in place to automate my intentions, to make sure I'm living what I said I was going to do. And that's just one of the ways that we do that. Because we've kind of got this culture around it's kind of like with losing weight, right? It's like, oh, I'm just going to willpower and I'm just going to, you ain't going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to eat a salad once a
you
day.
ain't going to do that. I'm going to go get this Snickers bar and I'm going to go get, So it's the same thing with finances, right?
Yeah.
If you because we're overcoming bad habits and bad behaviors. And so you don't just do that overnight. You have to create systems to do what it is that you're saying you're going to do. And the systems are what's going to get you to the results. And so the system with budgeting is, okay, here's my budget. Here's how I'm going to live. I'm organizing my finances this way. And the system now is, let me now take these different accounts and set them up in such a way so now everything is automated and now it's doing what I said I was going to do. Right?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are visiting with Efrem Jackson, founder and owner of Free to Serve Financial Ministries, and he is literally freeing us up, okay? You need to hear this. Rewind and start from the beginning because he's dropping gems right now. Thank you for being here again,
No,
Efrem.
thanks for letting me be here.
So, you said automate your intentions. To me, that's very powerful. Can you go a little deeper with that?
Yeah. So most people are walking zombies. If I'm being honest, we make a lot of our financial decisions from a deficit, a place of a deficit. And whenever you do that, you're going to make bad decisions. So if I say I want to start a business someday, if I say I want to travel someday, if I say I want to be intentional about sending my kids to the best experience and going and dance and doing all these other things, and I look at your written budget and I don't see where that's being intentionally planned for, well, then you're lying to yourself, right? You're living in a fantasy of one day I will be able to, instead of I'm going to intentionally plan to. I have more respect for someone that says, all I got is $10 extra in this budget, but I'm going to take this $10 and put it away in this savings account, and this is going to be my vacation fund start. I have way more respect for that than somebody that just constantly keeps thinking about, right?
Because they're taking a step toward it.
Exactly. You're taking a step toward it. So that's what intentional automating your intentions means. It means I am going to now create a system and automate that system so that system is going to function regardless of if I'm sleeping, if I'm away, out of the office, whatever happens. This system is now going to get me to the goal that I said I wanted. It's going to put the money into that account for me automatically. It's going to invest the assets for me automatically. It's going to do whatever it is so that I can actually go live out what I said I wanted to do, right?
Gosh, you got me in my feelings. I'm really thinking about this and internalizing this is powerful stuff. So, there are Black people, there's data to show that in Polk County, Black people are severely underbanked and unbanked. Yeah. There is distrust of financial institutions due to historical stuff like, the Freedom, what am I trying to say?
Freedmen's Bank, Freedom
Bank.
Bank.
Thank you, the Freedmen's Bank. Thank you. So, what do you say to people as far as when you think about automating your intentions that requires a relationship with an institution? Yeah. How do we overcome the distrust that we have? And by we, I'm talking to all of us. I am generalizing. I am speaking for us. So how do we overcome those feelings of distrust based on history?
Yeah, and that's real, and that's kind of what I was talking about, that learned trauma, right?
Yeah,
but it's real trauma. I had the same thing growing up too. My mom and dad didn't really trust banks, and especially grandma and them, they rather stuff it in a mattress somewhere.
Coffee can.
Yeah, because they didn't trust it.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is getting more educated yourself with how the systems are now, how things are in place and how they run, so that you can better understand these different systems and how they work. I kind of think of it as like we're all playing a game. We're all playing a game. Everyone is. And so it behooves us everyone to understand how the rules of that game are being played, because we're all playing it. I use an example sometimes in a class where I'll bring out a Japanese shogi set. It's a Japanese chess set, and I'll just sit it in front of people.
A shogi set?
Shogi set is Japanese chess. And I'll sit it in front of people, and I'll just start. I say, okay, let's play a game, and let's start moving. And they'll just start moving pieces, and I'm like, okay, you lost. Like, they're like, what? How did I lose? I'm like, well, you just started playing, and you didn't even know the rules.
Oh, yeah. They didn't ask.
You didn't ask the rules, and you just started playing. So I would say the same thing for people that are underbanked is, one, building relationships with people that you can trust, that can help walk you through the process, and making sure we're familiar with the rules, because we got to learn how to play the game. Because if we keep stuff in our mattress, we're not going to keep up with inflation. We're not going to be able to take that 1.3 trillion or whatever that number is in 2050 and actually be good stewards of it. So that's the first part, is how do I undo this trauma? And how do I then flip the script and then go and say, okay, I know this trauma is here. I know these are serious issues. These are issues that have happened in the past. But how do I take this now and then use this information now to build wealth for my families and things that are to come? So.
How important is credit and credit management, because this is another area where I feel like people struggle with their credit scores. I mean, what advice do you have for people who are looking to improve their credit scores?
Can I? I'm going to be real here.
Please, this is the place to be real.
I think far too many Black people put too much emphasis on credit and repair over wealth creation and what that means.
Are you saying if we got the Skrilla, we don't need the number, the credit score?
No. What I'm saying is that we put the cart before the horse. So I see when I'm doing counseling with people, I see people that are paying literally thousands of dollars to get credit repair and do all these things and do stuff that you can basically do for free. And I see a lot of people taking advantage of people in our community because that's all we talk. Oh, come get your credit score. And I'm not saying credit isn't important. It is very important. But I'm saying if we learn some of these concepts about budgeting, investing, some of these things, your credit is going to go in the direction of where you're going, right?
Also, that's the natural order of things, because credit, the credit system and credit scores and all of that is mystifying to some people.
Yeah, you're right. It is. But I think that we put too much emphasis over the basics and foundational things that are going to raise us up even above that. I've had people where they, like I said, they spend $1,000 on trying to improve their credit, but they don't understand the fundamentals about wealth creation. So, great, you got a great credit score, but you don't know how to use it to make no money.
Oh, well, there you go.
Right. Well, so what is that credit score going to do for you other than get you back into debt if you don't know how to use it? To go get something, to go, I'm going to use this score now because I want to go get some rental properties, or I want to go do this. You got a great score, but so what? And so that's what I think there's a disconnect. We teach people, go get this great score, but we don't teach them what to do with it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that, credit is not important. It's very important, and I get all that. I'm just saying that we need to get both parts of that equation right. Here's how you improve your credit, but here's the purpose and what you can do with it now that it's improved. Here's how you can maybe utilize that to get some actual wealth versus you just got a great score and you're just going to go buy another car.
Right. And I think part of that, too, is not knowing where to go for that information. And certainly people can come to Free to Serve.
Of course, yeah, of course. Yeah. I think and that's part of why I do what I do to try to disrupt the narrative a little bit. And so if someone comes to me and say, I just want to work on my credit, so I can ask the question, why? What are you going to do after that? Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm just going to get a car. Like, are you thinking about doing anything else? What else are you going to do besides that? And so to someone that can come in and disrupt the narrative and say, just to get people thinking like, I was just going to try and get my score up. I didn't know there was something else. I thought that was the pinnacle of the game. Like, once I got my score, I thought I was doing great. No, you can have a great score and have a horrible net worth.
Wow. I mean, look at you freeing us up, Efrem. Wow. Okay.
I mean, it's real talk. You can have a great FICO score but have a negative net worth. And I've seen people with horrible FICO scores, but got great net worths. Which would you rather have? Right, a couple $1 million in the bank, or 840 that just get you some more stuff with.
Yep. Interesting. I mean, goodness.
Now, obviously, I try to do both.
You are disrupting the narrative, and I think what you're doing so brilliantly is you're disrupting that self-talk that we have about money. At least that's what you're doing for me. My relationship with money is fraught with fear, with growing up not sure of, I mean, we weren't poor.
Yeah.
We didn't think we were. My parents did a great job at shielding us from the ills and ails that they were confronting or confronted with, but also they didn't know how to teach what they didn't know. You know what I mean? Exactly. So there was this lack of knowledge that just was kind of underpinned everything to do with finance.
But look at all the trash that's been placed on Black people psychologically as it relates to money. I remember growing up, and you remember Def Jam, the old, you remember Def Jam. But what did every comedian almost on Def Jam always talk about?
Money.
But what about money though? But what about money though? How broke we were?
Yeah, we terribly broke.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I think of Bernie Mac. Oh my gosh.
Right, but you grow up with that narrative, and that's all you hear all the time. And every comedian at the town's like, "Oh man, my credit score, I can't bad credit this," and you're like, "Wait a minute." I grew up thinking that having bad credit and being broke and living paycheck to paycheck was normal. I thought that was just. I thought that was normal for Black people. I thought that was what it was.
Yeah.
And it was until that narrative got changed to say, no, that's something that's being fed to your community to make you think that that's all that is. That's when that somebody has to come in and disrupt that narrative, right?
You gave a TED Talk about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I know because I did too.
Yeah, you also know.
We were on that stage, and it was one of the most, I guess, life-changing moments for me. I had the opportunity to sit, we all did, to sit and listen to our peers give their talks. And I'm not going to lie to you, Efrem, I sat and listened to everybody's talks, but yours has stayed with me. Like, it's really stayed with me. You talked about minding the gap and your experience out of the country and getting onto a train and the signage that you saw. Like, that TED Talk has stayed with me. There were elements of it that, made me question my own understanding and my own attitude toward money. Can you kind of give an overview of what that talk was and maybe even the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to write it and deliver it? Because that's a process.
Yeah. No, I think if I kind of summarize that talk a little bit, I like to think of it as, when you go to a pond and let's say you throw a stone in the water, and you see the ripples, right, come out. And I think of it like that there's a lot of things that impact us now that we are living the ripple effects of something that we didn't throw the stone in the pond. We weren't there for those events, but we're still suffering the ripple effects of these things. And if people don't understand the ripple effects and they don't understand why things are the way they are, then they make assumptions. But then they make assumptions with missing pieces of the puzzle. And so then they don't get the full picture of the puzzle because they're like throwing in their own assumptions. So when we look at wealth, particularly in the Black community, there's a ripple effect there of why we have the median net worth that we have right now. I think the latest data I saw was like around median net worth is around 27,000 right now, compared to the average white household was like 250,000, something like that. So a huge gap there. But if you don't understand the historical context of what happened to get us there, then you would assume, oh, that's just a cultural thing. That's just how they are, right? Or if you don't have that full context of that ripple effect, then as you're passing laws or doing other things, you're doing it without a full understanding of how those laws might continue to further impact individuals, right? And so I think that was the if I had to summarize that talk, that's the meat of that talk is what are the ripple effects that have caused Black wealth to be where it is today, the historical part of that, and then what do we do now as a result of that knowledge, of knowing. And for myself, I think I closed that talk by talking about that I'm the first generation in my family to do a lot of stuff. First generation to go to college, to get a master's degree, first generation to even have a chance at really growing wealth. I'm the first generation of my family to not touch cotton since slavery. My mom and dad did cotton in Mississippi and Arkansas. Right.
Yeah,
so, and people don't get that.
Yeah, when you said that, I'm like, me too.
Yeah, and it's so many of us. So many of that. That's a story for a lot of us, and most people don't get that because they think this stuff is years and years and years removed. I'm like, no, my dad picked cotton. My mama picked cotton.
Yeah, my mom tells the story of picking cotton, and on her sack was her little sister, my Aunt Lenora, God rest her soul. She would put my Aunt Lenora on the back of her cotton bag and drag her through the field as she was picking cotton.
Yeah, and people don't get that.
Yeah, they don't get it.
They don't get it. And so what do you do for creating wealth if you are the first generation to not touch cotton?
Yeah.
To get an education.
Yeah.
To even learn about finances. So some of the stuff I'm doing now is so far beyond what my parents even thought possible because they didn't have that knowledge, right? So of course the wealth, there's going to be a huge gap there. But if you go through life not understanding the ripples, you're just going to make excuses and say, oh, that's why that community is the way it is. It's not because of redlining. It's not because of this. No, they're like that because they just don't want to take accountability. Or you come up with your own narrative to fill in the reason why there's a gap.
Okay, I'm about to ask a messy question here, but in my opinion, you was talking about touching cotton, and yes, my parents picked cotton. I'm the first generation to not have to do that. Do you think all cotton products should be free for Black folks in America? Like, why do I have to pay for underwear, T-shirts, tank tops? Really, why?
Right.
Socks? Come on.
You get into a deeper issue of, well, what are the after effects, right? But then, okay, what are the how do you fix that issue, right? What does that look like? I think Malcolm X has a quote that I love that, if you put the knife in me and turn it and take it out, okay, you still have to heal my wounds, right?
Yeah, you took the knife out, but the wound is still there.
Yeah, the wound is still there.
Yeah.
So just because you take the knife out or you take it out a couple of inches there's still something there. There's a healing that has to happen there. So that does raise questions of what does that healing look like? And part of that talk, what I've talked about as well is how that gap impacts the entire nation. Because a lot of people like to keep things in this concept of, oh, this is your community, my community.
I'm even framing my questions as Black community.
Yeah.
Am I making a mistake by doing that?
I think in this particular case, it can be problematic in the sense that it further makes people think that it's not their problem.
Interesting.
Because as I mentioned in that talk, we look at data, when we talk about that gap impacts everybody's ability to grow the country economically, right? And so that's going to actually shorten everybody's ability to create wealth and do things like that. So it would behoove everybody in the country to come together to solve this problem so that everybody can be moving in the same direction, right? But if we continue to paint the narrative as this is that community's problem, because it's very easy for people to say, well, that sucks for you guys. Sorry that stone was thrown in the ripple effects, but I got my own family. I got my own stuff I got to worry about. But if we can get people to see and understand that, no, this is impacting everybody, not just this community. Obviously, it's impacting this community more than others. But if we can get them to see that, then we can start having serious conversations of what does healing look like.
I have so many questions for you. I'm going to try to squeeze them all in because our time is winding up.
No, you're good.
But I really feel like all roads lead to reparations.
Yeah.
And reparations can look like many different things. But in your opinion, do you agree that all roads lead to reparations? And in that process of repair, does that mean financial compensation for the people who are descendant of formerly enslaved people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my thoughts on that is I'm all for reparations, right? How it's done has to be done thoughtfully, because right now, if you were to pump tons of assets into the community and things like that without proper knowledge, we're going to be right back. Nothing's going to be done. But then it will be like, oh, well, here you go. You had your chance. Kind of.
I mean, I wouldn't argue with one way to do it would be to whoever the responsible parties are to pump some money into free to serve.
Yeah, that's where I would look at it.
And then you do legitimate education. Some Black-led organizations don't need no check from the government, okay?
Right.
They're not doing nothing now. They don't need an extra check to continue to do nothing. But organizations like yours, I feel like if that was, shored up by some sort of reparative financial answer, and then you can continue to expand what you do in the community, I think that's legit.
Yeah, that's what I would agree with. That's what I would advocate.
Yeah, you're going to agree with me.
Oh, not just me. Yeah, of course I'm going to. Yeah. Send all checks payable to. No, I'm just kidding. But I agree with you. I think that's the thing. It's about how do we take assets and then get them to organizations that are actually doing some things within that community? But I am definitely not for, hey, here's a bunch of, because that's not gonna solve anything at all. And I've looked at other proponents that talk about things like baby bonds and all these different things that have some type of benefit to them. But at the end of the day, to close that gap significantly is going to take some type of intervention at a larger scale level. To close it significantly.
Do you think it's possible? Is it wishful thinking, or is it really possible to close?
It's possible if we hit it on three fronts, right? Mm-hmm. So there's what can I do kind of as an individual level, there's what can I do at kind of local kind of community level, and then what can I do kind of at the governmental kind of level at that place. If we hit it from all of those angles, then yes. The largest chunk of that is going to be that last level. Mm-hmm. That's the largest chunk, because I can have knowledge and I can do all these different things and help teach the generations. But that gap is so big, it's going to take some major intervention to close it. But I 100% do believe it's possible. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I didn't think it was possible. So
one element that we rarely discuss in terms of, really anything when it comes to disparity in Black people, our struggles financially, mental health wise, and healthcare, education, you name the system. When we talk about the disparity, we always compare our where we are to where white America is. Rarely do we compare where we are to Latino America or Asian America. And probably the most prosperous group right now in the United States is Asian America. Why don't we ever get compared to them?
Yeah, that's and I think there's a lot of historical context behind that. If you really want to think, but you're right, Asian Americans, when I was looking at that state, I think there were about I think white Americans about 250,000, Asian Americans about 300,000 or something like that. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's part of historically how we've just always framed the narrative, and we think that's just how the narrative should always be framed, right? Because we've always looked at it as kind of black and white, right? But you make a good point that it might be okay to redefine what does that look like, and that's part of what I do with my organization, in my group too, is helping people figure out, well, what does good look like for you individually? Because we if you go out into the world, you'll see a lot of narratives about, oh, how much money do I need for this? What is a good net worth? What's this and what's this? And a lot of that is helping people figure out, well, what is it for you to be successful for you?
Right.
Because what you may need to do whatever mission you have here on earth, I might need something totally different. It might need less too. So you're right. I think there is a space to change the narrative a little bit about why that comparison happens, and maybe even reshape it and say, I don't need to be compared to anybody. I'm doing my own thing.
Absolutely.
Right.
So what role does investing play in building wealth, and what should beginners know before they start?
Yeah, and it's particularly for our community too, because there's a lot of data that looks at how African Americans tend to invest. We tend to be a lot more focused on real estate. Excuse me. A lot more focused on real estate and those type of assets, but not so much on stocks and those type of investments. And so I would tell anybody there as well is you got to diversify. We got to step out in some of these things. And a lot of reasons when I talk to people about, well, why aren't you looking into these type of assets? It's fear.
Yeah.
It's fear. Like, I've never done that before. Like, I don't want to lose all my money. Or they did it before and they did it incorrectly. And now that fear of doing it incorrectly, they like, oh, I did that tanked. I don't want to do that again. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think the best place to start is looking at your accounts that give you favorable tax treatment, right? So that's your 401ks, your IRAs, and you want to do kind of an order of operations. Let me put money away and put it away in such a way that Uncle Sam gets as little of it as possible. Right?
I'm telling you, Uncle Sam don't need nothing else from us, okay?
Right. So I would start there. And then after I go there, then I kind of branch out from there. But to be honest with you, most people, when they get to that level, that's going to be quite a bit for them. And start educating yourself about investing in finances, and find individuals like myself and other organizations that can help walk people through that. But that's where I would start. Start with something simple like your 401ks, your IRAs. Start doing something simple, looking into like ETFs, index funds, things that can get the foundation right. And what I would just caution people with is, I mentioned earlier about people making decisions from a deprivation.
Yeah.
And typically when you have communities that have struggled financially and they want to find ways to get out of a situation very quickly, right? Because you're struggling. Like, I want relief. And that's where predators and people will come in and say, oh, just, do this crypto, just go do this Forex, just do whatever it is. And not saying that those things are wrong, but if you hit people in the wrong order and give them only partial information, it's not going to behoove them. So focus on the fundamentals, focus on the foundation, get that stuff right, and then kind of move from there.
Home ownership, they always say that's the best way to build wealth in the United
100%.
States. You do agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
So how does home ownership impact generational wealth, especially among Black folks?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the major ways wealth is passed down, right? Is through home ownership. And you look at home ownership in the prior years and things that happened with the GI Bill and things I won't go into here, but you can see how even certain communities were able to pass down a large number of wealth because of home ownership, and they had access to homes and what they were able to do there. So yeah, without question. But I would advise people, as you're moving in that direction, there's certain steps and things that you need to do. Like we talked about credit. Now that's a good reason why I want to start working towards my credit. Why do you trying to get your credit? Oh, because I want to get a home one day. Okay, now that makes sense.
That's that intention.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now we have some intention around that. And now we can put some actions and things in place to help get you prepared to own a home. Because you can get a home, and if you don't get it properly, it can become a nightmare, right? Because if you overstep or kind of use too much resources to get it, you can end up making it a nightmare. But I would highly advise individuals, if home ownership is something that they're wanting to do, that is a fantastic way to pass on wealth. I'm also a big believer in rental properties and looking in that. I got my first property through house hacking, which I'll say
sounds dangerous and scary.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah,
and kind of cool.
That's for another conversation. But for me, real estate has done the most for my network over anything else that I've done.
House hacking. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to Google that and see what's up with that. I mean, you mentioned redlining. We talked about home ownership. I mean, how do you feel about people selling Big Mama's house after she passes away? Like, don't sell Big Mama's house. Don't sell Granddaddy's land. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's I always kind of look at it as again, intentionality. What is the goal here? I'm going to sell the money and I'm going to go blow it in Vegas. I'm going to go sell the money because I'm getting ready to do another property, or I'm going to start a business, or it's the intention behind it. And then, because sometimes people think, well, Big Mama wouldn't want you selling it. And so I'm trying to instill in my kids, I want you to do whatever's going to be best for you and your family to keep moving you in the direction that we need to go as a family unit. And if that means selling the property to move in the right direction, then sell the property. If it means keeping the property, then keep the property. Once again, it's about intention. There's no one right or wrong way to tackle some of these questions. It's really about, as I kind of mentioned before, what's the intention behind what we're trying to do? And if I'm moving in the right direction, by all means, sell Big Mama's house. But if you're not, man, don't be selling Big Mama's house so you can go blow a trip in Vegas.
Okay, don't y'all do it.
Right.
Listen to Efrem.
Yeah, don't do that then. But that's a whole nother conversation, though.
Interesting. So finally, what is one piece of advice you wish everyone who is Black would follow when it comes to their financial health? One piece of advice that you wish we all knew. One
piece of advice I would tell people is raise up your kids with the knowledge that you did not have. Start having conversations about finances a normal thing, because they're not getting the information in schools the way they should. There's so much information on YouTube and TV and all these different places where it makes it very difficult to weed through and get the stuff that they need to actually grow real wealth. So if I would give them one piece of advice, start making the conversation normal, and then plan out your intentions for what you want your finances to do, and get help and get around people that can help you get those intentions into reality. So
you done messed around and set us free, Efrem. You done messed around and set us free.
No, I appreciate you.
So my final question for you is what I always ask every guest who joins me on Black and Privileged in America podcast is, what is a book? Share a book that has moved you, changed you, challenged you in some way. What do you have for us?
Yeah, it's a book I read some years ago, but I remember when I read it, I was like, okay, yeah, I was you get the highlighter out and you like getting stuff like, okay, yeah, I like this. It's a book called Millionaire Fastlane. I know the book title sounds
it sounds like the opposite of what we just talked about.
Yeah, it sounds very sus, but it's not. He made that title like that on purpose. It's MJ DeMarco is the author. And in that book, what I liked about it is a very no BS kind of in your face what it takes to make money. And it was very laid out, like, look, you need systems, you need this. Look, if you can't scale, then you don't have a business. It was very in your face. And I really like that kind of approach that I think a lot of people could benefit from. Yeah. Let's get through all the fluff. Let's get real and tell you what the real is. Because there's a lot of people that want to blow smoke up your rear end and make you think that all this stuff is super easy to do. But it's
really not easy.
Yeah.
It's hard work to get it together.
It's hard work to get it together. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier once you have the systems and you have the network, and now you can keep doing stuff. But yeah, when you're starting out, and that's why it's good to read the books and get people around you that can help you. So.
Awesome. So that was Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to add it to my library. Efrem, thank you for being here.
Thank you. This was great. Appreciate you letting me be here.
I'm just totally I'm going to change my life after this conversation, and I hope you all do too.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Black and Privileged in America podcast. A big thank you to Efrem Jackson for sharing his invaluable and practical advice. Money matters, and financial literacy is a journey, people, and every step we take brings us closer to economic empowerment. Subscribe, like, and share. Find Black and Privileged in America podcast on www.amplifydsm.com and my website, abenasankofa.com. Stay engaged, stay curious, keep striving. Thanks for listening. Until next time.